This is The Impact of Rosa Parks by Jackson Kuzum. So what was the problem of the time? The early to mid-1900s was a period in which racial inequality was high. Reconstruction was coming to an end, and white politicians began to abandon the cause of protecting African Americans. Segregation was widespread, and many laws held African Americans behind. The Smithsonian National Museum shares African American men were largely barred from voting. Legislation known as Jim Crow laws separated people of color from whites in schools, housing, jobs, and public gathering places. Bus segregation was also a crucial part of these laws. Taking away their voting rights was just the first step in taking away their civil rights. Over 40 years, they continued to attempt to restore their so-called supremacy. There was a woman who wanted to end this, though. Her name was Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks was an African-American activist who had aspirations of changing the system. The story of Eloise Cobell, which speaks of her troubles in challenging the government, inspired me to write about Parks, who went through similar difficulties. Both stories represent the courage and sacrifice needed. It all began in December 1943, when she joined the National Association for Advancement of Colored People, where she was elected as secretary. According to the Library of Congress, Parks then became an advisor to the youth of the NAACP in 1949. 12 years of this participation led to the moment that changed the course of history. The first notable outcome of her actions was her inspiration on others. According to the National Archives, her arrest became a rallying point around which the African American community organized a bus boycott in protest of the discrimination they had endured for years. Martin Luther King Jr., the 26-year-old minister of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, emerged as a leader during the well-coordinated, peaceful boycott that lasted 381 days and captured the world's attention. It was during the boycott that Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. first achieved national fame as the public became acquainted with his powerful oratory. She brought out MLK Jr., the father of the Civil Rights Movement. Later on, Martin Luther King Jr. shared his perspective on Parks. In his book titled Stride Toward Freedom, he wrote, "Millions of Negroes all over this nation have a new sense of dignity and destiny because Mrs. Parks inspired an event which in turn inspired them. Her influence was great enough to be included in the words of one of the greatest difference makers in the Civil Rights Movement." However, acting against the government like those of Parks result in consequences, legal and personal. Refusing to give up her seat on December 1st, 1955, got her arrested. According to Jeanne Thoris, a political science professor at Brooklyn College of the City University of New York, describes in an article written for the Library of Congress magazine, her bus protest plunged her family into a decade of health and economic instability, which is reflected in their 1955 to 1965 tax returns. As if the economic struggles weren't imposing enough, Parks also received a hefty amount of death threats. Confrontation on the Bridge by Jacob Lawrence represents the act of pushing through fierce obstacles, which is what Parks displayed through these troubling times. The perseverance of Rosa Parks through the challenges and daunting oppression represents that of no other in the Civil Rights Movement. Although the actions on the bus are often seen as her only contribution, there was a lot more to it. As I mentioned earlier, she played a large role in the NAACP. According to Kayla Richard, a graduate of Texas A&M University with a political science degree, in addition to being the secretary of the NAACP, Parks became the advisor to her local NAACP's Youth Council. In this role, Parks supported youth activists as they began to challenge the system of segregation in Montgomery. Under the leadership of Parks, the NAACP Youth Council at that time was instrumental in challenging the segregation of libraries, which prevented African Americans from checking out books. Also, the Library of Congress shares that Rosa Parks' political activities in Detroit were even more diverse than they had been in Montgomery. She worked on prisoner support, helped run the Detroit chapter of the Friends of the SNCC, which is the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and took part in the growing movement against U.S. involvement in Vietnam. Attending scores of events and meetings across the city, she traveled regularly to take part in the growing Black Power movement across the country. Her actions, external to those regarding the bus, prove why she played a more prominent role in the progression of the movement than nearly all others. On the other side of the argument is that a teenage woman named Claudette Colvin played a more pivotal role in the progression than Rosa Parks. She boycotted the bus system nearly a whole year before Rosa Parks did, and people pushed for her story to be seen as the spark of Parks' actions. Philip Hu's degree in history from Yale University, in his book, Claudette Colvin, Twice Towards Justice, criticizes campaigners for failing to recognize Colvin, stating that, "I hope that Claudette Colvin, Twice Towards Justice, changes the way we talk about the Montgomery bus protest." However, it is crucial to understand that all contributors at the time of Parks were crucial in the progression of the civil rights movement. However, some stood out, and that has to be understood. Accepting that some, like Rosa Parks, made a bigger difference is like comparing Martin Luther King Jr. to a fellow activist, Malcolm X. Although both of these men contributed largely to the movement, MLK's actions are more highlighted, and they made more of a difference. We can compare this to Rosa Parks and Claudette Colvin. Both made a difference, but one made a more recognizable and significant one. In conclusion, Rosa Parks paved the way for a progression in the civil rights movement. Her actions on the bus in Montgomery on December 1st, 1955, and her contributions outside of that all support her legacy. She is rightfully labeled as the mother of the civil rights movement because of the difference she made. Through the sacrifices she faced, her support in the NAACP, and most importantly, her influence on the African American community around the world, she achieved global fame and played a crucial role in progressing the civil rights movement. Thank you.
Yes.